Okay, so I just wanted to finish that last example from the previous video. I have uh, x here, the domain of this expression g over f. X has to be greater than or equal to -1, but it cannot be equal to +2. It also cannot be equal to -2. But you notice here that x is not allowed to be back here anyways. It can't be less than -1. So this -2 here is pretty much irrelevant. We only have to worry about this direction here because that's where the direction the arrow is pointing. Okay, all these numbers here are included except for +2. So I'm going to write this finally in interval notation, that x can be anything between -1 up to +2. Okay, I got the square brackets on -1, the parentheses on +2 because it's not allowed to touch it, the union symbol, anything from +2 or higher, and that can increase all the way to +infinity. Okay? And there you have it. This is my domain. Okay? Now, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here so we can look at all three problems and see them in context. Okay? So, from the beginning, f of x, the domain is all real numbers, so it can be anything. G of x can be anything that's greater than or equal to -1. Now, if you notice just a big picture, all of these domains of f times g, f divided by g, and then g divided by f, they are always at least as restrictive as g of x. Okay, g of x has the most restrictions right now. It can't be less than -1. Okay, and so when we put them together, when we multiply them, it did make it more restrictive, but it did not make it any less restrictive. So there can be more restrictions, but there cannot be fewer restrictions. Okay, same thing here in part B. What we actually found out here is it got a little bit more restrictive because x cannot be equal to -1 anymore. And then finally in part C, it gets even more restrictive because now the domain excludes +2. So the moral of the story is that when you have two functions, you take their domain from the beginning. When you combine them in any way, shape, or form, the domain of that new function should be equally restrictive or more restrictive than the originals.